All right, guys, welcome back to part 4 of the Coolster500 build. Last time we were working on the rear suspension, and now we can finally move on to the front. Here is our donor. This is a 2007 TRX 300EX frame that I picked up for 150 bucks. I'm gonna be robbing everything off the front, and believe me, this is all an upgrade over this. When you start looking at it closely, these A-arms are way bigger. The brakes are larger, both the caliper and the rotors. Our spindles are beefier, the shocks are stiffer and can hold more weight. Our tires are taller. Everything about this is gonna be an upgrade. So let's start ripping the front of the Coolster apart and then dive into the 300EX. Okay, so I've been looking at steering, and it looks like the 300EX has the tie rods mounting on the back of the spindle, and the Coolster has them mounted on the front of the spindle, and it's up really high. The Coolster was also utilizing this steering rack right here, and it'd be nice to use this again. I don't know how I'm gonna incorporate it. If I do use it, I'm probably gonna have to make an extension from here down and use that like underneath the go-kart. Oh yeah, that's way better. Okay, so let's see. All right, so I think what I'm gonna do is remove this bar, that one, and then those two right there, and then replace it with two that go all the way here, and then maybe go another 4 inches past where those go, so it just gives me more room to mount my master cylinder and my gas pedal, and I won't have this problem where I'm hitting stuff, and yeah. You'll be able to stretch your legs right out. Good. She's a squirter. All right, so now our front end is all cleaned up and we're ready to start bending. I got the tube bender all set up. I actually already started on our first piece here. So this piece is gonna go in like this. I'm gonna make a second one that looks just like that. It's gonna be on this side. So now I'm gonna show you guys how I made that. All right, so I found this piece of tube laying around. It already had a 50-degree bend in it. That's kind of what I was eyeing right here. So I set this thing to 50. It doesn't matter. As I'm doing it, I'm gonna lay this one over it and make sure that we're at the right degree here at 140. Now we can start our 40-degree bend right here. All right, so we got those two pieces tack welded in. I'm probably gonna be making some sort of support down here just to keep them nice and rigid, but I'll do that later. Right now I'm gonna skip ahead to taking apart this 300EX. Let's get into that. Okay, so we got her all stripped down, except for the front end. I'm gonna leave all this stuff together to keep it rigid. The next step is to just cut the frame right down the middle right here. I'm not sure exactly how much of it I'm gonna use, so I'm gonna keep everything together until I need to chop off pieces. So if you guys are 300EX lovers, close your eyes. Yay! Okay, so we have our 300EX A-arms clamped onto the side of the go-kart in approximately where we want them to be. We set our camber to a neutral camber. This is as low as it will go. It's not on the ground. After getting in the go-kart with it mounted here, we noticed that these shocks are not strong enough for the weight of the go-kart and us. So we've upgraded to those Ride FX shocks, which came off of a Polaris Outlaw 525 with independent rear suspension. Those are the front shocks. Okay, so one thing I didn't show you guys was me hole sawing that hole out for the steering rack. So that guy's gonna bolt underneath the go-kart. I also needed to extend our tie rods. So these are the tie rod and tie rod ends off of the 300EX. And then I took a segment of the tie rod from the Coolster and chopped that in half, which happened to have the threads that we needed, reverse threads on one side and forward threads on the other side. So that bolts right up there. And it actually came out perfect. The width is right within the range of hooking up to our steering knuckles. So we're gonna be good. Okay, so moving on to correcting our steering rack. What we're gonna do is measure from this pivot point to this pivot point. .22½, almost on the dot. So what we're gonna do, this is the steering rack. These ball joint ends actually thread right off. So our pivot point is right here. If you look at, I mean, this thing is pretty nasty, but if you look in there, there's a ball, and the center of that ball is right around here. So if you were to take that and you line it up right here, that's where it needs to be mounted. So what I'm thinking about doing here is measuring how far down those threads go, cutting this part off, right? The outside diameter of this just happens to be 25 thou over the inside diameter of my 1.5" pipe. I mean, it's pretty darn close. So I think what I'm gonna be doing is turning this down so it matches the inside of this, and this will be my extension. So far what I've done is I took these two pieces, I turned them down 12.5 thou. Here's our new tubes. These ended up being 5 3/8. So these are gonna press in here. It's a nice tight fit. I'm not gonna do it right now, but they fit right in there. I drilled those holes so they're on center with each part. Okay, so they're all pressed in. Got both of them done. They came out pretty good. They're gonna be tight enough to be able to do what we wanna do without welding. I just don't wanna, you know, weld it and then find out that we need to shave off an inch or something like that. So these thread right on to the end of our steering rack. All right, so if you look at the center of each ball joint here, we took a measurement there, we're right at 22.5. Okay, round two. Round one did not go so good. As you can see, I had to start completely over. I ran into some camber issues the second I got my cross members welded in. So now I'm using square 1-inch tube that's an 1/8 inch thick. It's pretty heavy duty and it's gonna hold this thing together nice. You can see I got some mounts on here, so now it will bolt onto the go-kart in case I ever need to take it off. This chunk here is just so the steering rack can get the right angle. So yeah, let's get this thing bolted onto the go-kart. Okay, so now that we have our A-arms mounted, we can move on to mounting our front shocks. This original mount from the old shocks is not gonna work, so I think I'm gonna be removing this. Right now, I mean at full droop, but this is not where it's gonna be. It's gonna be up, this kind of screws with our tie rod angles when it's all the way down. So it's probably gonna be, oh, let me see here, let me pick her up a little bit. That's probably gonna be full droop, somewhere around there. And if you look up here, the top of that shock is almost right in the corner of this bend. So I think what I'm gonna do is once I remove this plate, I'll put in 2 tabs right there, and this shock will sit right in there. It'll put it in at a little bit more of an angle, but I think it'll be perfect. All right, guys, now that we got this thing all cleared, it looks beautiful. The next step is to put it together, but we're not gonna show that to you right now. We're gonna save that for the next video. We're also gonna show you all the things that I didn't show on camera, all the fab work that I did. So yeah, until then, we'll see you next time. Oh my God!